Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project with your host Mick Spears. We bring you thought-provoking guests and topics every week to challenge your thinking about leadership. Our aim is to help you become the leader that you wish you always had as we learn together and lead together. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project. I'm greatly honoured today to be joined by dear friend Jovel Fernandez. Jovel has had a celebrated executive level career in the healthcare and pharmaceutical industries with some really groundbreaking success as a leader, but then also as a scientist. She's also lived in many countries as an expat from the Philippines, living in countries all over the world, including Europe, or throughout Asia and into the US. And that has led her to develop quite a deep understanding of what it feels like to be an expat in these countries. And she's then become the author of a great book called The Expat, where she shares very entertaining stories about those experiences, and it's full of life lessons throughout. And that's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to focus on the expat and what it feels like to be parachuted into some of these countries as a foreigner, into these different cultures, and what it means from a leadership perspective. So Jovel, it's great to have you on the show. To get us started, please say hello to our audience and give us a bit of a flavour of the background that led you towards wanting to write this book.
So thanks a lot, Nick. And hello to all the listeners out there. You're broadcasted around the world. So it could be good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And really, like me, I'm a loyal listener and so much interest and amazing shows that you have. I hope I'll be able to do justice with you having me here today. So what led me to this book is, one, I would like to impart some of the best learnings that I had, because I do feel like as a woman, we are so much challenged with all the things that we have to do. Apart from fulfilling our duties and responsibilities and obligations at home, as a wife, as a mother, if we have kids, as a daughter, as a sister, as a productive member of the community, we also have to ensure the fact that we meet the expectations at work. And how do we also achieve our goals aligned with our capabilities and our skill set to succeed in the work that we chose and in the path that we chose to go to. So I guess those are the ones that I believe are important. And that's the reason I wrote this book. And of course, you gave me a lot of interest as well and inspiration about this with your experiences during the past, Mick. So thank you so much for that as well.
All right. Well, thank you, Jovel. You brought up something interesting already there, which is about identity. All right. So you're a mother, you're a executive, you're a role model to other female leaders in the industry. There's so many parts of what makes up Jovel to be Jovel. When you start going and traveling into these different countries, how much of the challenge is related to your identity?
I would say a lot, because before I became relocated, so before I lived and worked in other countries outside of my comfort zone, and that comfort zone is the fact that I'm originally from the Philippines. So I'm used to the culture, I'm used to the language, I'm used to the behavior of those individuals living in the Philippines. But when we moved out from the Philippines to Japan, to Singapore, to US, to Belgium, there were some expectations, right? We can learn a lot about these countries from what we read, from what we hear from others, but it's really entirely different once we are living in that country. So to give you an example, the way dates are written, right? Expiration date of things that you buy from grocery stores are different. So is this the month? Is this the day? Is this the year? So it's very different. So that's just a simple example, the basics, right? How do we then manage to live in a comfortable way in those countries? And of course, a big chunk of it was, how will it be with my family as well? When I uproot them with me, when I relocated to those countries, when I expatriated to those countries, my family came along with me. So my husband, what will be the impact to his work? My children, what will be the impact to their schooling, to their friends, to their social lives? How those are the things that I need to balance as well and try to look at, is it really worth it at the end of the day? Is it really more productive and more comfortable and also more sort of moving from one country to the other? Will it lead us to be better persons than who we are or what we have been from the country we're originally from?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, that when someone does go on an expat assignment, it's usually a family. It's a whole family that's jetting in, and the person that is the expat, the worker, goes into an office and they're occupied during the day. They've got people that either welcome them or don't welcome them. We'll talk a bit about that later, but they land there and there's some level of structure and infrastructure around the expat themselves. But then you've got all of the other things to consider, the schools, children. If you've got a partner that is now going to have to go around a foreign city where they speak a foreign language and have a different culture, and almost to be left to their own devices during the day whilst the person's at work. How did your family cope with that?
Yeah, it's indeed interesting because for us living in the corporate world, working in the corporate world, we know that experience outside of our country where we are working, broad experience globally will really propel us towards a better job, better role in the future, right? So that's just us, to your point. As leaders, we are inundated with several opportunities, and the option to make that decision is there. Now, the family is very important. And I believe what happened in that, if I would look back, say 2 decades ago when we started all this expatriation, is the fact that communication is there. Of course, one could argue that my kids were very small. They cannot make their decisions. You can just filter as a parent what you want to communicate. Hey, you should come with me to Japan because, it's a clean country. You have 4 seasons. You can see all these things. You can see all these beautiful things. Of course, we may be guilty. I was guilty with the fact that I didn't really give them the opportunity to make the decision, although one could argue they're still small, so they cannot make that. And we thought as parents, we are obligated to provide the best means for our children, for them to grow and thrive and have a better future, right? For my husband, he's a physician as myself, so he has to live his practice. And basically, one of the things that was a bit of a struggle is what will be his career to the new country where he will be moving into. It's a good thing that he was so much interested with the stock market. So anywhere where there's Wi-Fi connection, internet, so it's good. So he was able to develop himself in that way. But I know for a fact that many expatriates will have some difficulty with their families, apart from integrating themselves with the business, but also with the family, because then they have to manage, to your point, the demands of school, new environment, the needs of the spouses as well in order to fulfill their own careers too. So those are equally challenging, and I acknowledge those. So I would say, again, it's communication that's very important. Looking back, did I make the wrong decision? I don't think so, because I feel I became a better person. My family became better persons when we moved and learned various cultures, various languages, had the opportunity to be exposed to these environments that really challenge our course in the process.
Yeah, so a whole family learns and grows. They need to adapt. My feeling is they become richer from the experience, but it doesn't mean it's easy. There's going to be moments where it doesn't go to plan and all of that. Okay, right. Now, let's go through some of your experiences because, as I mentioned in the intro, it's a very entertaining book with some amazing stories, and each story has got a lesson attached to it. So tell me about A Naked Man in Belgium. What happened there?
It's actually a naked guy in Germany, basically. It is so interesting when there is that sort of perception, how people are, who they are, because of that unconscious bias that we have, right? So, for example, I know for a fact that as Asians in other cultures, they may look at, not the same equal, but maybe in a different way. And that way may not be a good one, right? That perception about them may not be a good one. So what happened then in Belgium was the fact that, we usually have business meetings. The meeting was over. Sometimes I like to make the most out of my stay in countries where I am. So, but I'm also afraid to do things by myself, especially if it's like a foreign territory. As much as possible, if I do something, if I go out, if I can tag along along another colleague or a friend or somebody that I know in that country, I will tag them along with me. So what happened in Germany was, my colleague and I actually went to the spa, and in that country, basically the spa for men and women were on the same floor, at least in that hotel where we were staying. And suddenly a man appeared out of nowhere. And I know I made some joking comments in my book, how I perceived it. But basically he just showed out of nowhere, poof, like suddenly out of nowhere, he appeared in front of us naked, totally naked. Everything, nothing, not wearing anything. And basically, it's like when you are confronted with that, how will you react? So my friend was actually blow drying. My colleague was blow drying her hair. We were just chatting. And we stopped talking because he said, ladies, can you massage my back? Like matter of fact, like not even something. It's like mandatory. You should do it. Like, can you massage my back? It's not even, it didn't sound like a request, but it's like, we are Asians. We should do it. Right. So it really took me aback, and then basically so challenged with that situation. But to make the long story short, so they have to buy my book so that they can find out what happened. But that guy actually, in the first instance, I said, no, we are not comfortable doing that. And then basically he came back again. So this time insisting why. And then maybe in his mind, I'm the most handsome guy in Germany because he really looked like Chris Hemsworth. Seriously. Like all my girlfriends were saying, Jobelle, seriously? You let that opportunity pass? It won't happen again. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, really, he looked like Chris Hemsworth, so tall, muscular build. So you can just imagine my colleague and I were really petite from his perspective, right? So he can easily take both of us. So I sensed some danger, whatever that is, because he was so insistent. And the only thing that he didn't pursue us further is because I said that our husbands are actually in the hotel waiting for us at the hotel lobby, which was true, by the way. So I guess that situation was, if you are confronted with something totally, you're surprised with it. I mean, if you look at the internet, seriously, will you find something? Oh, suddenly a guy will just show himself naked in front of you. You will not find that, right? So it's so difficult how to respond to situations. So that's just one situation that I knew was entirely surprising. Some of the stories also in my book were like surprising, like the don't open the window and all those things. But at the end, I guess you would ask me, Mick, what then made me make that response? I guess wherever we are, whatever we do, wherever we are relocated into whichever country, what is important is we maintain our core values, right? We maintain who we are. And I guess coming originally from the Philippines, raised as a devout Catholic, it is important for me that those things should not be something that should exist in my world.
Yeah, so values is a really good point there. And for me, a huge takeaway from the story is whether you're an expat in your case or a tourist and you're visiting someone else's country, you're going to end up in these situations where there's a cultural mismatch. Yes, there might be some implicit bias in this story as well, but ultimately there's a cultural mismatch. So it's very common throughout Europe for spas to be unisex, quite often clothing optional, and it's just culturally accepted. The whole back rub thing, I'm not going to go there. That sounds completely inappropriate, but imagine being put in that situation where you're in a country, someone is doing something and it's not right by your own personal values and beliefs, but there's got to be something that's going on in your head going, yeah, but is that just their culture? And is that the way things are done around here? You could say onsens in Japan, same thing. There's that situation. Even down to, actually, I'll use another Japanese example. In Japan, it's very polite to slurp your soup. And if you're not slurping your soup, it's impolite because it's not showing respect to the chef that made the soup. In Australia, if you slurp your soup in the restaurant, everyone will look at you and go, oh, who brought you up, kind of thing. So you end up in these situations where you've got a cultural mismatch. And in Jovelle's example, which is a far more extreme one, you've then got a decision to make. And there's so many things going through your brain at that time. So I think that's a really key takeaway there. So you made a decision that was stayed true to your values and beliefs, but these are the kind of experiences that can happen either outside the workplace in this case or even inside the workplace. I want to go to an example now that's, I think, very emotional as well. And you did mention about window before. So tell us about your experience in India that was very confronting.
And to your point also, Nick, that the cultural appropriateness, right? How do we interpret certain behaviors in a country? So going to India, that experience was truly unique because it challenged me as a mom, basically. And the story goes like this. It's really very hot, very humid. I boarded a cab to go somewhere and the air condition of the cab wasn't functioning well. And then I didn't understand what the driver told me when I told him I want to open the car window. The title of that chapter was Don't Open the Window. He said something. And actually what he said was Don't open the window. We are in the middle of the traffic. Because when I opened it, it's really a split second. The second that I opened it, suddenly a baby girl was thrown at my lap. So you can imagine, oh my God, what's happening, right? So I was really stunned. I cannot move. I was like in total disbelief. What has been happening during that time? Then a woman outside was pleading, saying something that I didn't understand. I interpreted it like, take my baby, something like that, or pay me because you held my baby. I mean, so many things again going on in my head because the language was very difficult to interpret. But at the same time, the actions, the gestures said something otherwise, right? So I was very afraid. I didn't even attempt to touch the baby during that time. And the reason why I said it challenged my core as a mom is because what I found out later on with that experience was that mom had several kids and one of them died the day before because of extreme hunger. And she thought even me as a total foreigner may be able to give a better future to her child. So that itself is like, I didn't, judge the mom. I didn't say she did the wrong way. But what I thought was, here's the mother in her own perspective, based on her assessment, I could be a better option to her baby rather than her taking care of her baby because they barely have anything to eat. So here I am traveling all around. I actually missed times to really take care of my kids. They were small. They were growing up during that time. Yet what was I doing? I was booked to this very posh hotel. I barely touched my foot in the plane. Everything was so delicious. And the reason why I didn't touch them was because I was attempting to go on diet and to lose weight. Yet somebody is really suffering without anything to eat. So it gave me another perspective about humans in this world. They have various needs. And sometimes little things in our lives, we have a certain perspective. We interpret them differently. We actually are experiencing so much comfort that we miss what the others are actually having or experiencing. And that's why I also mentioned in my book, the profit of the sale will go to charity because my husband and I are so passionate at doing a lot of charity work to help those people in need. So that was a reality check for me that as a mom, what will you do so that you can give the best for your children?
Yeah, well done, Jovel. And thank you for giving your proceeds to charity. That's just amazing. And thank you for doing that. And I hope it has an impact on people's lives. That's another example of a very confronting situation, right? So India, I say firsthand, one of the nicest hotels I've ever stayed in was in India, and just outside the perimeter, less than 500 meters away, was some of the worst slums I've ever seen. So it's a nation of contrasts, and what I would consider completely unacceptable. Growing up in Australia, or even in all of the countries I've lived in, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Singapore, Philippines, I would say that what you see in India would be confronting to most people. You would say that you wouldn't live with that, right? But it's the way things are there. And then the other part of the story, apart from that confronting image that you see in those countries, that's very different, is then both cognitive and emotional empathy. So you're sitting there initially thinking, how on earth could a mother with maternal instincts possibly give up her baby? That's just couldn't be. That's incongruent with what a mother is. But when you step back and go, no, this mother was going, this is the way to give my child possibly the best chance of survival. So it was maternal instinct. It's maternal instinct that shows up in a completely different way to what we're used to, but at the root of it, it was still maternal instinct. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, exactly. Because even us as leaders in the corporate world or as individuals in this society, right? What is the reason? What is the why behind a certain action? And sometimes we miss that because unless we understand why that mom was trying to give her baby away, because I can easily judge her saying, why are you doing that? That's so ridiculous. You're not a mom at all, right? But if I try then to understand the rationale, why she did it, the why behind it, then I began to understand her better. And then it gave me a lesson in another way to really assess me as a person and to become a better person in the process.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, what I want to do now is move towards the workplace, and I want to shift us to Japan and some of the experiences you had there. Now, I know your story, so I'm going to give a few headlines of what I took away from it, but then we want to hear the flavor from you and the richness of the story from you, Jovel. So Japan, once again, different culture, different society, different societal expectations. I would say as beautiful as Japan is, there is still an element of misogyny in the country. So it's a male-dominated country. There are strong female leaders there, but they're usually the exception, not the rule. So it's quite a male-dominated family situation. It's a male-dominated industry. You land there in a very senior leadership role in pharmaceuticals and in hospitals. And here you are, first of all, you're a foreigner. Secondly, you're a woman. And the takeaway I took from the story is at least initially, they didn't want you there. They didn't want you there. So how did that feel? And how did you work through that to the point where it turns into a great story? But how did you deal with those initial months where pretty much you were not welcome?
Actually, make that chapter 9 in my book, which was entitled She Won't Last Long, was the most painful chapter that I wrote. I really cried after writing it because as I relived the moment of having that resentment, having that feeling of isolation, or to your point, you're not wanted here, you don't belong here, you're not like us, you're a Gaikokujin foreigner, which actually means outsider. If you look at their Japanese character, what it actually means, you're an outsider, you're an alien. So you don't belong here, right? So it was very challenging for me. My motivation is the fact that I believe that we have value in this world wherever we are. It is how we make use of a certain opportunity to our advantage and be driven by what we wanted to do in the first place. So, for example, my motivator there in Japan is I know there are young individuals, young talents, young females who would really want to be trained, to be coached by somebody like me, because I have a certain perspective, given the fact that I was actually educated in Japan as well. So before the corporate life, I was in Japan for a little over 8 years. So I knew the environment. I know the perception. I have some cultural understanding of what they are really thinking. To your point, male-dominated society. You are an outsider if you're a foreigner. So I feel that there are some individuals who may benefit from my presence there. So, and then secondly is as a physician, my dedication is to patients wherever they are in this world, regardless of their nationality, regardless of their country of origin. So I do believe that with that role that I took in Japan, I will make a difference to patients, not just in Japan, but to other countries as well as outside of Japan. So that feeling of resentment, that feeling of you're not needed here, you're an outsider and all those things. And they made me realize it every now and then. You know, when people talk behind your back, they didn't know I speak the language. They didn't know I understood everything that they said. So basically that lingered continuously the entire time. And one could argue as an expat, you are only given an assignment like usually 3 years, right? And then after 3 years, you're given another assignment to another country. So for me, okay, they said, oh, she won't last long. She won't last more than 3 years. You know, we shouldn't care why she's here. She will leave anyway. So what happened was I stayed longer than 3 years, which one could say, or others may say, are you crazy? Are you even a masochist? Why do you want to subject yourself to continuous resentment or continuous isolation. At the end of the day, I sense that most of them actually benefited and liked my stay. So, for example, I was able to encourage more women to consider working while having their own family, while raising their own children. Because in the past, if you get married, you have to take care of your husband and your kids and have babies and so on. You shouldn't be considering a career in corporate life or whatever, right? So I was able to encourage women, young women. I was able also to encourage men to help them raise their kids and not leave everything to the wives. And also, that piece, it really put a smile on my face because basically, I'm reading in front of me when I left that role, they actually gave me a dedication with all their pictures, including the locals, including everyone, because my team was really huge, more than 200 individuals. And basically they said, for being that leader that inspired us towards excellence and also to always try to be better than our best. So your hard work and dedication made us to who we are today. So that really gave me a lot of not just sort of, I did that. I made the right decision, but also some comfort. And also I tell myself I made the right decision.
Yeah. Okay. So well done on winning them over in the end and getting to that point. When I'm listening to that story, I'll tell you what I take away, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. The first one is co-creation and the second one is group learning, right? And those two are going to go hand in hand. So when you arrive in this new culture, in my view, you're there for two reasons. You're there to learn and you're there to impart. The learning is you're in a new culture. So you've got things to learn about, okay, how do they do things here? So you're going to be richer from the experience to see, okay, that's really interesting. I wonder why they do that way. Whether it's a cultural norm or it's a procedural norm, right? So in the hospital, do they do things differently compared to what we do in Australia, US, Belgium, other countries that you've lived in, Jovel? So there's the cultural norms, there's the procedural norms. What am I learning from them? But of course, you're also there to bring your experiences and your ways of doing things to them, including leadership, including procedural things, including an element of culture so that everyone's richer. But the reason why I come back to this word co-creation, if we're not holding space for each other and thinking, hey, what can I learn from this local team in Japan? And then the local team in Japan going, Jovel, she's very different to what we're used to. I wonder what we could learn from her. And if you don't have that attitude, if you just stay at the combative element of, hey, this is a culture mismatch, you don't get that richness of the learning and the shared experience. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, I really love how you coined that one, Nick, because it's all about that learning and it's all about that art of listening, right? What does the other person really need from you? How can you enable the success of the other person? And in the process, how can you be an instrument to the growth of the other person as well, right? So I'm a forever student of learning. I'm a sponge, actually. When I meet individuals, I always would like to take that opportunity to learn something new, not just because it helps me to really position myself. Okay, how can I be of service to this person? How can I be of value to this person? And that adds some element of satisfaction to me as well, because at the end of the day, sometimes one of the things that I wanted to do, in my to-do list is to put a smile on somebody else's face in a day. That's already very satisfactory for me. So to your point, it's that learning piece and also give each other some space to grow and learn, because their input, their intake, how the information or a communication or a certain training or learning material will land on somebody will be very different based on whatever their background is, where they're coming from, the values that they bring, how they perceive you, and so on and so forth. So many elements come together.
Yeah, really good, Jovel. So now there's going to be people listening to the show. A lot of them are aspiring leaders or some of them are very experienced leaders, and they're going to have these opportunities to go on expat assignments themselves, right? At some point, a lot of them. How do you make a decision? How do you make the decision to go or not go? So you've had multiple opportunities, and each time both your family and yourself had to make that go, no-go decision. How do you weigh up the benefits versus the disruption of, okay, family, we're packing up now, we're moving to a country you've not been to before. How do you make that decision?
apart from the obvious of putting, writing on a piece of paper and 2 columns, and then you have the risks and the benefits or merits and demerits and plus or minus, which I didn't do, by the way. It's really more about assessing or have that quest of what's really out there from, you can hear so many stories about how things are in other countries, but it's very different when you are really there. So what motivated me, and I guess a key decision that they need to take, and I cannot tell them take it or it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, just go ahead and begin, just go and pack your stuff and travel with your family or relocate with your family. It's more than that. It's really, what do you get out of it that you think, assess the situation well. What will you get out of it that you think will be more beneficial compared to where you are today? So for example, we have individuals who refuse to relocate because they're very comfortable, extremely comfortable. They don't care about other societies. They may not have, they don't really aspire to learn living in another country. So that's another group. Another group they could be very comfortable, but yet they have that thirst for understanding what others are, what other countries are beyond traveling. Because if you travel, you just go to the tourist spots. You're not really inculcated to that culture. You're not really integrated and incorporated there. The other group could be, we don't have much here. I believe if we travel, if we move to this country, we will experience and we will reap the economic rewards of it. We can be better, more comfortable, whatever the reasons are. At the end of the day, it's their own satisfaction and gratification. And at the same time, how do they perceive themselves? And my main motivator, my main secret is I have a mission in life, which I have on my bedside table, which I really wrote. And basically for me, that mission is the mission, the legacy, how I want to be remembered in this world. And basically I said to be a successful wife, mother, sister, friend, daughter, physician, and a productive member of the community. Do I think that if I stay where I was before, living, before expatriating, will I be able to be more successful? Perhaps. But I think my understanding and adaptability and resilience and agility, looking at things, making decisions will be very restricted. So that was the same as my understanding today, that exposing yourself to areas or environment where it is beyond your comfort zone, where you believe that you can thrive and your core values could be challenged, are very important to fulfill that mission or legacy that you might have.
So I like that growth mindset again, and I can see that you could see the opportunity that comes from it. It's not just financial. It's all of those things about how I'll be a richer person from the experience that I'm about to go through. So that brings us to a really important question. What did you learn about yourself through that, Jovel?
I became a real best version of myself because along those expatriation opportunities, living and working in various countries, I realized how to really prioritize. What are the things that matter to me? Does it matter to me to have this sexy title in the corporate world? Or does it matter to me to dedicate more time with my children, with my husband, or to dedicate more time with my charity work? All those things I learned how to prioritize. I define myself better. I continue to define myself because then I understood, or at least tried to understand, the perspective of other individuals coming from other cultures. And then, of course, I learned to let go. That's the most painful one, learning to let go. Experiences that are extremely painful, excruciatingly painful, that you cannot do anything. It's done. It was the past. So how can I learn to let go? So those are the things that really helped me to become a real best version of myself.
That's really interesting, that last part there. The whole thing was interesting, of course, but that last part, before you can let it come, you've got to let it go. So if you're going to truly learn from these new experiences that are thrown in your face, these cultural differences, all of the things that Jovel's been sharing, if you can't let go of what your own expectations are, not letting go of your values, like we said earlier, but just letting go of your own preconceived ideas about how the world should work, you can't let the experience come, right? So you got to let it go to let it come. That's really cool. All right. Now, next question is, what did you learn about other people and what did you learn about leadership from all of these experiences?
So I was able to define the type of leader, my type of leadership. And actually, I also included it in my book, The Velvet Hammer. So I can empathize, but I cannot be fooled. I can listen to the needs of my people, my direct reports, those individuals within my control, and those individuals within my sphere of influence. I can listen to their needs. I can empathize, but I can also make sure that things are done appropriately for the right reasons, guided by what should be right, what mattered most. So I was able to define that type of leader in me. And then if you could ask me, will you not be able to do that if you just stayed put? Perhaps, but maybe I wasn't that exposed to various perspectives that I believe are truly important for you to be a leader. As a leader, you are seen differently, whereby you epitomize a certain, or you are a model of certain value or perfection somewhere. Whether you're very good at making decisions, whether you are inspiring others, whether you create whatever or increase the revenue of the company, however it is, based on those expectations, right? So defining myself as a leader was very important. That happened along the way. And what did I learn is determining that individuals, people are people. You cannot control how people will behave. You cannot control how people will think, but you can control what you will say and how you will behave. That's very difficult. As a leader, sometimes spur of the moment, we say things without really realizing an impact of that behavior or that action or those words to other individuals. So those are very critical and important. So I learned how to step back. I learned how to have mindfulness and to really understand, okay, this is for the good of everyone. How will you be able to deliver so that it will land well and appropriate action will be done?
It's another version of letting it go there, Jovel. So coming to the understanding that you can't control other people, but you can control how you respond to them. That's an element of letting go as well. And it also helps you to understand things like irrational behavior, what looks like irrational behavior to you, but you got to remember that you can't control that. And people do things emotionally. They do things that look irrational to you, but to them, it makes complete sense. And you do have to let that go and just work on your own response. All right, lots of lovely learnings today, Jovel. I really have appreciated this. I'd like to go to our rapid round now. So what's the one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were 20?
I guess I should know how to write a list, list the things that you need to prioritize each day, because you will be inundated. You will have a lot of meltdown if you do gazillion things every day, and not everything can be controlled. So I wish I could have realized how to prioritize and how to write, like, these are the things that I have to do today. And it's okay if I won't be able to do all those things in a certain day. I should be okay not to feel okay, not to feel not okay. I mean, I don't know if I said it differently. I should be okay even if I don't feel okay, something like that. But that list, you should be guided by it, but it's not the end of the world if you don't do everything.
That prioritization's key. So what are your must-haves? What I also like recently that I've stumbled across is the concept of a to-don't list. There's so many people that have a to-do list. What's on your to-don't list? And the things that you don't do give you more time to do a better job of the things that you must do, right? So, yeah, really good, Jovel. What's your favorite book?
So my favorite book is actually Shakespeare in Charge. It's written by Norman Augustine and Ken Edelman. So I had the opportunity to be taught by Ken at Wharton Business. So basically, the reason why I love that book is because Shakespeare, those are plays. We know Shakespeare is a very good writer, very rich with words, but actually, I saw it differently because he talked about people, behaviors, leader and a follower, peer to peer, friend to friend, people who could be your allies or people who could turn their back against you. So I believe that those learnings come into play as leader. Of course, Leadership Project is very good, right? I mean, it's very relevant in today's world. And one of the things that I also love about Shakespeare in Charge is it provided a certain perspective that every time time I watch movies or TV shows or I read books, I interpret them from a leader perspective. So the leader behaved in that way because the leader made the decision during that time because. So, for example, Henry V, famous quote, all things are ready when the minds are so. So basically, it's very important whatever we do, if everything is ready because our minds are really ready to do the task at hand, everything we assess that we will win the battle, we will certainly have that perspective. So that's the reason why I really love the book. And also, it's so interesting. I know we're going off tangent here. I had my very first acting gig at Wharton because we had a Shakespeare play, leadership actually, which is so interesting. I never actually equated Shakespeare with leadership until such time that I realized it's all about people and those decisions made during critical moments.
Yeah, very good, Jovel. What's your favorite quote?
So I guess I would quote my book, Become the Real Best Version of Yourself, because I know you can be a real best version of yourself in whatever circumstance that is. I know there are many driving factors. There are many areas that would deter you not to become a real best version of yourself, but I know it's possible. I did it and you could also do it.
Yeah, brilliant, Jovel. And if people want to know more, they want to get a copy of the book or they just want to know more about your stories and the lessons that you've learned, how do they find you, Jovel?
So they can go to my author website. It's my name, jovelfernandez.authorchannel.co. And they can also find my book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. They can also go to their local bookstore and they can ask them to order my book if it's not available. It's available on ebook version, paperback, and also hardbound covers. So I hope they will be able to, learn about the powerful life lessons that came from living, working, and traveling around the world. And it's really something that I'm so excited about. And again, Mick, you really supported me on this one. I don't think I'll become an author without you there by my side. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, thank you so much, Jovel. It's been an absolute pleasure watching you bring this to life. And once again, the stories are amazing. I highly recommend. It's entertaining at the same time as being educational. So please do get a copy of The Expat. You won't regret it. It's a wonderful read. Thank you so much, Jovel, for your time today and for sharing your stories, your insights and your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Mick. And thanks a lot for the listeners out there. And I know there's a lot of things that will come from Mick's podcast, and we have to continue to listen to it because we will always be learning and be informed along the way as well. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for listening to The Leadership Project at mickspears.com. A huge call out to Faris Sadek for his video editing of all of our video content and to all of the team at TLP. Joanne Goes On, Gerald Calabo, and my amazing wife, Say Spears. I could not do this show without you. Don't forget to subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel where we bring you interesting videos each and every week. And you can follow us on social, particularly on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, in the meantime, please do take care, look out for each other, and join us on this journey as we learn together and lead together.